Week 9 Sunday NFL preview, everything you need to know in 15 minutes. If you've never been here before, welcome. My name is Max. I make these for every game on Sunday as well as every primetime game to give you a unique edge looking at run scheme metrics, coverage data, and overall trends nobody talks about because it relates to the scheme behind the game instead of just the numbers you see on the screen. Without further ado, let's get into these breakdowns. If you guys were here Thursday, I appreciate you. You know we had a crazy Mark Andrews prediction. If you are new, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything like that. Let's talk Chicago versus Cincinnati. As always, make sure you're locked in on my socials. That's where a bunch more information, picks, as well as breakdowns are. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok all linked below at Lobes Leads. There are two bad run defenses in this game, guys. Chicago Bears are giving up the third most yards per carry in the NFL, and the Cincinnati Bengals are giving up the fourth most yards per carry in the NFL. There's a lot of question marks just in general with this game with Joe Flacco. I'm staying away at the time I'm recording this because there are question marks from the Bengals side of things. Chicago's defense has not been great, but it's important to know they're zone heavy. That's what Dennis Allen likes to do. A lot of middle field open, cover 2, cover 4. To me, that says tight ends and running backs. A lot of these teams are the same way. We'll talk a little bit more about them as the video goes on. But we have to talk about this Bengals run defense first because they've given up more 100-plus yard rushers than not since week 3. And as you know, DeAndre Swift is out. Kyle Monungai is up. You go look at some of these games against the Cincinnati Bengals since week 3. We had Jordan Mason 16 for 116 and 2 touchdowns. You had J.K. Dobbins 16 for 101, and even R.J. Harvey had plenty of work on the ground because it was a blowout. You had Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery, who combined for 100 yards, but Montgomery gets in the end zone. Gibbs finds the end zone in the receiving world. Josh Jacobs, 18 for 93 and 2 touchdowns. Jalen Warren, 16 for 127 on that Thursday night game. And then Breece Hall, 18 for 133, with Isaiah Davis still averaging, almost 10 yards per carry against this Bengals defense. The bottom line with DeAndre Swift is you should be firing him up. Kyle Monungai, you should be firing it up because DeAndre Swift is out in this game. In terms of who is projected to win this game, the Bears are, which is interesting on the road. I think they are the better team. I do think they win this game. I think the Bengals defense has a lot of question marks that we have to continue to discuss before we can confidently lean into them. Minnesota versus Detroit. Detroit at home. This is a tough spot for the Minnesota Vikings. J.J. McCarthy's first start since week 2. They're terrifying, especially off of bye. I don't like Minnesota in this game a lot. Detroit right now is projected to win by 9 points. I think it could get into double digits. Obviously, none of this is financial or professional advice. I think Detroit does win this game, but it's important to know Minnesota is allowing a lot of rush attempts per game. It's the too high effect. They're very heavy in terms of middle field open. And just in general, that usually means tight end production, running back receiving production. So you look at Sam Laporta and you think, okay, maybe he has a better game. Couple very interesting things here. So Laporta has a pretty heavy uptick versus middle field open and zone coverage. A lot of tight ends do. This is nothing crazy. But you go look at Sam Laporta's game logs. He really hasn't gotten a zone-heavy team outside of the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears in week 2, but it was a blowout. So I look at the Browns, the Bengals, who are going to do different things. Kansas City, who plays a lot of middle field open, plays a ton of man. Tampa Bay, who does a lot of different things. And I'm like, what is the breaking point here for Laporta in terms of what we can believe with his production? Because I go look at some of these game logs against the Minnesota Vikings at the tight ends. That's Miami. Tight end position specifically. Oronde Gadsden had a great game last week. David Njoku had 6 for 67 against them a couple weeks ago. Darnell Washington didn't do anything crazy, but then you go continue to look back at these tight ends they played. Like Kyle Pitts is the best tight end they've played outside of 2 quality tight ends they played in Njoku and Gadsden not back-to-back weeks, 3 of the 4 weeks, and Goddard had 3 for 18. So guys like Harold Finn Jr., guys like David Njoku, guys like Oronde Gadsden have gotten in the end zone. They've had solid games. They've been able to take advantage of a defense that really opens up the middle of the field, opens up everything between the hashes. And to me, Sam Laporta hasn't had a ton of matchups like that. Maybe he finds the end zone. I think he's a good option here to look at. I think he's got a good fantasy matchup. The only thing that worries me here is a potential blowout, but the way Minnesota has handled tight ends recently, I like him. I do. Indianapolis versus Pittsburgh. This, to me, is the game I have the most information for, the best breakdown for. I will be there, too, if any of you guys are there, Pittsburgh people or Colts fans. Make sure you say what's up if you see me. I'll be doing some interviews in the tailgate lots as well. If you want to be on an interview, make sure you check it out. Aaron Rodgers, bottom line here, as I do really like him for the simple reason that the Colts are bad against the pass. They don't have Charvarius Ward, and they're good against the run. That's the bottom line. They're allowing less than 95 rush yards per game and more than 270 pass yards per game. It's a defense that's bottom 10 in both tight end and wide receiver yards allowed. Everything through the air is going to be there for Pittsburgh. Everything on the ground, I don't think will be there. So DK Metcalf sees a lot more out wide usage. To me, that's the lean here. But I do like Calvin Austin because you go look at some of his games. He's had plenty of targets with Aaron Rodgers in the lineup, especially as of late. On the other side, Pittsburgh's a heavy man-to-man team, and Alec Pierce sees the biggest increase, but Josh Downs is seeing frequent target. The biggest issue here, though, and I'll go to the game logs for Indianapolis to show you this, they haven't seen a lot of man teams. Like they got Denver in week 2, and that's it. That's pretty much it. There has not been a lot of man-heavy teams that the Indianapolis Colts have had to play. Miami is as holistically as the year has gone on man-heavy, but not consistently. Denver man-heavy. Tennessee very zone-heavy. Rams very zone-heavy. Vegas, I think the most zone-heavy team in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken. Arizona, more balanced. Chargers, very zone-heavy. Tennessee, very zone-heavy. They haven't seen a team that's just going to line up across from you, load the box, play cover 3 match, play cover 1, and say, go beat us. Now, I think if the Steelers do that, they're screwed, but they haven't seen a team that's going to do that. And I am fascinated to see, because you look at these first couple games, right? A guy like Josh Downs had 6 for 51 against Denver. Alec Pierce, 4 for 68. Pittman Jr. The bottom line with the Colts offense is they're going to spray the ball around a bunch. Like that's how it goes with this Colts offense. And Jonathan Taylor is the focal point. But to me, Tyler Warren is the guy I'm looking at most. Pittsburgh's allowing 6.4 receptions per game and 80 yards per game to the tight end position. They've also allowed 3 straight 40-plus yard games to the tight end position, and 3 of the last 5 starting tight ends have gone for 80-plus for a tight end against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's pretty noticeable. Now, Michael Pittman Jr., Alec Pierce, not Alec Peace, Alec Pierce. Very interesting to note, because with those guys in general, the volume is never really going to be there. Like if you think Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce will take advantage on their matchups outside, like a long reception would be awesome. But I can't confidently sit here and say Pittman's going to get 8 or 9 targets or 4, 5, 6 receptions. Same with Pierce. Like the volume to me is not really going to be there. And again, you can go look at some of the game logs with these guys. Obviously, Pittman is the number one, and he's had plenty of games where he's had 6, 7 receptions. But Pierce, like 98 yards against the Chargers, but only 5 catches, 69 yards last week, 2 catches, 48, 2 catches. Like the volume, really for both of these guys, is hard to trust. Again, I think a big chunk play could be there for them, especially because Steelers are a very heavily out wide targeted team instead of a slot targeted team. But do you really trust that volume? In this game, I think Indy takes care of business. I actually think this is a pretty high scoring game, but I think it's a close game. I think this is a really close game. I think Pittsburgh keeps it close at home, tough environment, but I do trust Indy on the offensive side of the ball to pull ahead. San Francisco, who, believe it or not, is favored on the road against the New York Giants. 2 players I want to look at, 2 number 1, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, receivers. Darius Slayton, number 1. The Niners are bottom 10 in wide receiver receptions allowed, 6th, and bottom 10 in yards allowed, 8th. They're allowing 156 yards per game to opposing receivers. Now, there weren't a ton of targets to go around last week, but he led the Giants in targets first game back. He had a touchdown called back. If this is a game where the Giants are trailing, the game flow is going to help him 100%. On the other side, though, it's interesting because the Giants I think, will sell out to stop McCaffrey. They're still giving up the most yards per carry and almost 150 rush yards per game. The way I see it, no Purdy again. Mac Jones is playing. No Ricky Pearsall. Obviously, Kittle's back. But the way I see it is the Giants are going to say, hey, let's do everything we can to stop McCaffrey. I'm not going to compare them to the Texans' performance last week because the Texans' defense is just way better. But if they do that and say, okay, you guys go beat us on the outside. Juwan Jennings, Kendrick Bourne, go do it. Juwan Jennings is seeing a crazy uptick versus man-to-man, like insane uptick, like more than double the amount of targets. It's pretty wild. It's a smaller sample size with him against man-to-man, which is also important to note. But I look at Juwan Jennings against the more man-heavy teams in the NFL, like New Orleans played a fair amount against them because it was Mac Jones' first start. Everybody else has been really zone-heavy. But you look at the New Orleans game, it's 89 a touchdown. And back-to-back games, he's had at least 7 targets. I think he's slowly getting healthier. He's slowly finding his role. As much as I really, really like Kendrick Bourne, To me, Jawan Jennings is the number one. I think Mac Jones trusts him, and I think he has a unique edge there. I think the Giants, believe it or not, upset them. This is one of my upset picks of the week. I think the Giants upset them in this game. I think offensively, they're going to cause problems for a defense that's young, that's raw, but can be taken advantage of with extending plays, can be taken advantage of with an offense that's truthfully playing pretty well right now. And I think it's really important to understand that this Niners defense, which is balanced, they don't win. They don't win one-on-one and man-to-man. They don't. And I think Darius Slayton, I think Wan'Dale Robinson can take advantage of that. Los Angeles Chargers versus Tennessee Titans. Los Angeles Chargers 10-point favorites, I believe, in this game. Two bad run defenses. Here's the issue, though. Teams can't consistently run against LA because they're playing catch-up. But Tennessee, you can consistently run against them, both bottom 10 yards per carry. And that's why Tennessee, not Los Angeles, is bottom 10 in yards per game. Kamani Vidal is the guy I'm looking at. No Hassan Haskins. Tennessee is giving up the 7th most yards per carry, 7th most yards per game. Obviously, Chargers, like we talked about, heavy favorite. But more importantly, the Tennessee Titans are really bad against man-gap scheme runs. Instead of zone scheme runs, man-gap scheme runs, the Chargers run more of them, where Vidal is more efficient. And obviously, because the Chargers run more of them, is getting more touches in it. They're also a heavy zone team, the Tennessee Titans. That's probably going to lead to more running back receptions. On the other side, though, it's really important to note that a guy like Tajay Spears is a very interesting point of conversation for here, because you look at 3 straight games of 3+ catches against a Chargers team that's going to sit back and play a ton of zone, especially if they're winning. Aaron Jones had 4 targets last week, guys. 4 targets for a running back is a good amount, especially if he's not playing half the snaps in his first game back from an injury. And you can see here, like, Spears and Pollard, very slowly, the dynamic is changing. So if you're getting on any type of Chargers running back in this game, the numbers and past production have very much said Tajay Spears. And I think because the Chargers sit in more zone, he could have some more opportunities in the pass game. It's also important to note, if you have Oronde Gadsden on your fantasy team, he's getting another defense like last week with the Minnesota Vikings that is extremely high in inline target rate. So that means he should have more opportunities. Obviously, the slot target rate matters as well. Middle field open matters as well. Tennessee is just a zone-heavy team. They're pretty balanced in what they do open versus closed, but he should be getting more targets. He should be getting more looks because of that high inline tight end target rate. Carolina, Green Bay, kind of a crapshoot, to be honest with you guys. They're both zone-heavy teams. Tucker Kraft has a good matchup against this bad Carolina defense. Oh, before I go, I do think Chargers win this game. I don't think it's close. James Cook had the game of the year last week against this Carolina defense again. We talked about last week how good James Cook was as a favorite, the Bills off a bye, all this stuff. But Jacobs has no injury designation. They're heavy favorites. I still think Emmanuel Wilson could get some work, but Josh Jacobs, to me, this could be a 3-touchdown game for this guy. I mean, he's getting the goal line work. I think Green Bay has a lot of success scoring points in this game. I don't think Carolina's defense is by any means a pushover, but I think Green Bay's offense is that good, and it's a tough matchup for Rico Dowdle. It's important to note, very cool stat I found. You guys know we've talked about it all year. Green Bay is really good, allows a lot of receptions to running backs because they play so much zone. They're extremely zone heavy. But in the last 5 weeks, they're only allowing 3.6 receptions per game to opposing running backs. They're slowly getting better. They're slowly forcing teams to beat them other ways, and it's been working, to be honest with you. Denver versus Houston. Houston's the number 1 defense. They're a heavy zone defense. Denver is a heavy man-to-man defense, but I did some research. The one game last year where the Denver Broncos did not have Pat Surtain, they played way less man-to-man. They were balanced in terms of middle field closed, middle field open, the zones that they played, but they play a lot less man-to-man. They wanted to protect their corners without Pat Surtain, which makes a lot of sense, which now leans into Woody Marks, which now leads into the guys who are between the hashes. Obviously, Dalton Schultz, if he plays, we're still waiting. Dalton Schultz, guys like that who are between the hashes, who are safety valves instead of guys who take the top off the defense. Those would be guys I'm looking at in that game. Atlanta versus New England. Penix and London are back. No, Ramondre Henderson's going to have more of an increase in the offense. New England has a heavy inline tight end target rate. But my question to you is, can you trust Kyle Pitts? Now, back-to-back games, he's had at least 9 targets. Obviously, one of them was with Penix. One of them was with Kirk. He's had at least 7 catches in back-to-back games and at least 59 yards in back-to-back games. So he's taking advantage of good matchups, like similar matchups where Miami was targeted there a bunch. San Francisco, not as much, but Miami targeted there a bunch. Even Buffalo, you go back, targeted there a good amount. In the slot against Washington, Washington is, I believe, second highest slot target rate in the NFL. but a high target rate in the slot. A ton of work there. My question becomes, though, like, how much trust can you put into Kyle Pitts? How much trust? Right now, he's projected a little less than 40 yards, I believe. Can you trust that? I don't know. It's a tough spot because this New England team has been so good at meeting offenses where they're at and taking away their best option. This week, Christian Gonzalez is obviously going to follow Drake London, so I'm staying far away. But I think the most important thing is what they're going to do to Bijan, because the run defense in New England is very good, but they are a heavily targeted team out of the backfield. So I look at Bijan, the tough games that he had, especially when you look at his performance last week against the Miami Dolphins. And I still trust a bounce back, especially in the receiving game. Like, you can see it, guys. There's been more games this year than not where Bijan has had at least 50 yards receiving. Like, he is the mainstay. I think they're going to screen New England a good amount to take advantage of what they do defensively. And they're very balanced. They do a lot of really good things. This, to me, is a big bounce back spot for Bijan through the air. Not necessarily on the ground, but finding ways to get him the football through the air. I'm more looking at for Bijan Robinson. Atlanta's a heavy zone team, but they play a lot of cover 3, so it's a heavy out wide targeted team, which is really interesting. Keyshawn Boutte, by far the most routes on the outside, but Stephon Diggs is the guy you should be looking at, I think. Diggs and Douglas seeing way better efficiency numbers, targets per out run on the outside. Stephon Diggs is averaging more than 3 yards per out run on the outside. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot for a guy who's playing 80-ish% of snaps, who's running routes virtually every pass play. Like, he should, because of that number, have some opportunities in terms of yards per out run, the coverages Atlanta's going to run at them, and the fact that, Atlanta's not bad on the ground. Like, they are a decent team on the ground. The Patriots don't have their starting running back. Drake may should have to throw the football a little bit more. I think New England wins this game. I do think it's a close game. I think Atlanta's obviously a very confusing team in terms of how good they are, what they can do, but I think New England wins this game. Kansas City, Buffalo, Rashee Rice is the main guy we have to talk about, right? The Bills are a very zone-heavy team. You can see down here, second most yards per carry, more than 150 rush yards per game allowed. No Pacheco here. Kareem Hunt's probably going to get the short yardage, goal line, base, down and distance, carry work. Brashard Smith, probably situational, if I had to guess, but again, we don't really know. Ed Oliver also on IR with torn biceps. It's a big blow. It really is. Buffalo plays a ton of zone. Good amount of midfield open, but a ton of zone. And they've given up 3 straight weeks with double-digit receptions to the opposing team's number 1 wide receiver. You go back and look at these games, guys. It is double-digit targets, not receptions. Absolutely insane. Ted McMillan, 10 targets. He had 7 for 99, right? 10 receptions for Drake London, 158. 10 receptions for Stephon Diggs against this defense for 146. And they had been good throughout the entirety of the year, but Tyreek Hill still had a 10-target game. Zay Flowers had 7 for 9 against them. Like, the pass offense against the Buffalo Bills as it relates to outside production is solid, but here's the issue. Buffalo's targeted way more in the slot, right? Rashee Rice is not the main slot guy. Like, we talked about it last week, Xavier Worthy is, but he is targeted a ton from the slot. So when he's running routes from the slot, Rashee Rice is getting targeted more often than guys like Xavier Worthy, guys like Hollywood Brown, even guys like Juju the past few weeks. It's just the fact that he's not running as many from the slot. I trust him. I really like him in this game. And honestly, I think the Chiefs win this game. I do. The Ed Oliver injury is scary. I think the Chiefs offense is firing. Am I crazy for saying it's not close? It might not be. But on the other side of the ball, a guy I would be watching for, again, is James Cook, because they continue to find ways to get him involved, even though the matchup may not be great. Last week, we talked about Carolina's run defense. They're not bad, but he made them look stupid because of the opportunities he got. And in my opinion, James Cook, who, by the way, is leading the NFL in rush yards per game, I want to make sure everybody knows that, more than Jonathan Taylor, can be the best player on the field, not named Josh Allen, when the Bills' offense is on the field. So I'm looking at James Cook if they can get him involved. New Orleans versus the Los Angeles Rams, not a ton of great stuff here. I mean, there are 2 zone-heavy teams. I'm not leaning into anything really for Tyler Shuck in his first start. On the other side, like, New Orleans, very heavy out-wide targeted team. To me, it says Devontae Adams, but at the same time, they've been really good against receivers this year. Puka is back. I can't confidently lean into any of them. I think the Rams defense has a great game. I honestly think if you're looking for something fun, I think the Rams defense might get in the end zone. That's my hot take of the week. Las Vegas versus Jacksonville. Vegas, another zone-heavy team. Travis Hunter is done, obviously, right? He was out for a while on IR. To me, this is a game where Jacksonville has to throw the ball. They are getting targeted on the outside at a high rate, which we'll talk about here in a second. But Vegas is a very zone-heavy team, and you go look at the game logs against this Las Vegas Raiders team, and there's a pretty clear trend with where the targets and receptions are allowed, right? You can see last week, Rashee Rice, like 7 for 10. It's guys who are primarily, again, coming across the middle. Like Olamide Zaccheaus, 6 targets, 5 receptions. He led reception-wise the Bears against them. You go look at Indianapolis. Josh Downs, 6 catches. Rashee Rice, who, again, not the main slot guy, but has targeted a bunch from the slot, had 7 receptions. You go back and look at a lot of these performances, like Stephon Diggs, a slot guy. Brad McConkey, 5 receptions, as many, not as many targets, but as many as Keenan Allen against them. Like everything comes in the middle against Vegas. So when I go think about Jacksonville and what they have now, to me, the middle guy is now Parker Washington. I think if you're in a bad spot with your fantasy team, I don't think he's a horrible start, especially because Vegas has not been good against receivers. But on the other side, again, Jacksonville targeted out wide a bunch. Trey Tucker by far is the most routes. Jacoby Myers, though, seeing better efficiency numbers, again, but less routes. Sunday Night Football, very quickly. Seattle, Washington. Seattle's a heavy zone team. Jaden Daniels versus zone is Zach Ertz, pretty heavily. No Terry McLaurin. I'd also watch for Bill Krosky-Merritt. So 2 players on that side and then 2 players on the other side. Washington keeps everything between the hashes. Super heavy slot targeted team. Super heavy inline targeted team. My question is, can you trust a Seattle tight end? I don't know if I can. Like, I like AJ Barner. I do. I don't know if I can trust him. I'm looking at JSN in this game again. He doesn't line up in the slot as much, but Kupp is the main slot guy. He's battling an injury. We don't know if he is going to play. Next guy up is Torrey Horton. So I would say JSN and Kupp if he plays. But if not, Torrey Horton on the other side. Bill Krosky-Merritt receiving specifically. And I do like Zach Ertz a lot in this game. But that is it for the Week 9 Sunday breakdown. If you guys did enjoy, please do leave a like and subscribe if you are new. We'll see you for Monday Night Football. God bless you guys.